Everybody was so surprised when I decided to quit my job. I decided that I wanted to be a teacher. Having achieved a finance degree from Wharton and then landing this job in finance, and that to them was success. But it didn't feel like success to me. Here's my grandma. And I remember my grandmother saying, "I'm happy that she's doing what she's always loved to do." She reminded everyone, "Don't you remember Carol was always playing school?" And every day after school, I would pretend that the doors of the closet was a chalkboard, and I would pretend to be a teacher and write math problems on the chalkboard. And somehow, some way, I had some students, and I was a teacher from a very small child. I grew up in a small city. What happened is the city decided to close the neighborhood schools and create more regional schools, which meant that when I was graduating into becoming a middle school student, every student in the city would go to one middle school that was predominantly white students. I was the only black student in my class. And I remember it was like the first row, the first desk, and I sat by myself all the time. Nobody would sit next to me. No one really noticed. So I didn't talk about it, or that's just the way I lived every day at school. So when I moved on to high school and I realized you have choice. If I chose classes that were beneath my ability level, then I could be in classes with my friends and not be in this isolated, lonely kind of existence. So that's what I did. Everything was at a very low level. And of course the work was super easy for me, and I was happy. One day I was walking down the hall with my friend, her name is Tracy, and Tracy was saying to me, "Hey, are you going to take Shakespeare?" That's an English literature class. And I said, kind of loudly, "No way am I taking that class. It's too hard. The teacher gives way too much homework." But the teacher was right there. She heard me. She always had these glasses on, and when she talked to you, she would look at you over the top of her glasses, and she just kind of stepped right into me and looked down in her glasses, and she said, "And if you don't take my class, I'm gonna call your mother." And I was like, uh-oh, I'm gonna get in trouble. So at first I just thought, what business is it of hers to get involved in the classes that I want to take or not take? But turns out what she did was she did call my mother. She went to the guidance office and pulled all my academic records and looked at all the courses I was taking, and she looked at my grades prior to coming to high school and realized that I wasn't taking the classes that were at my ability. And the next day when I came to school, the teacher said, "This is not your class anymore." All my classes were changed. And it was because that teacher, how she stepped in. And at the time I did not appreciate what she had done. By the time I graduated, she became my favorite teacher. What she did for me in that moment has become a defining moment in my life. And it's a moment I always refer back to, because I know that had it not been for that accidental encounter, I definitely wouldn't be here. And I realized how important it is to create school environments that allow interactions between students and teachers to happen frequently and naturally outside of the classroom. Teachers who are freely and willingly giving of themselves outside of teaching is critical, at least to our learning environment. The greatest learning that occurred for me in my high school experience happened in the hallway on that day. But I was fortunate to be introduced to Westover and then be introduced to Groton and then Miss Porter's, and I felt that it was time for me to give back. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We opened our school when the pandemic first hit.
We're all trailblazers.
We challenged them also to think differently about their education.